Hey listeners, don't forget to find You Don't Know Jack Show on Facebook at facebook.com/You Don't Know Jack Show, Twitter at twitter.com/Don't Know Jack Show, and Instagram at instagram.com/You Don't Know Jack Show. You can also follow Carson on Twitter at Radio Ruben. Now back to the show.
I'm here so I won't get fined.
You think you know sports? Well, you don't know Jack. The You Don't Know Jack Show starts now.
Hello and welcome to the You Don't Know Jack Show, episode number 28, as this is recording the week before the actual episode is going to come out, but I am joined by yet another ArmchairAllAmericans.com writer, and the You Don't Know Jack Show, as Matthew knows, is now powered by the ArmchairAllAmericans.com, so we will be trying to have armchair guests on every other week or so throughout our episodes, and of course we'll have the guys on the other weeks as we just had them on last week, as you heard. So Matthew, thanks for joining us. And how about those Steelers making some big moves?
Hey Carson, thanks to be back. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Just re-signing everyone.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on, first of all, I guess, the Le'Veon Bell part of it? Because Le'Veon, obviously, he's a great running back, probably top 3, if not the best, depending on your opinion. What was your thoughts on just the tagging part of him and not necessarily able to get a long-term deal done?
Well, I have an article up I posted the other week about, the use of the franchise tag, and just because he's tagged doesn't necessarily mean he has to play on the tag. A lot of times teams just use the tag in order to deter players, keep them out of free agency, so to speak, just to keep the bidding war. To stop a bidding war. So
right.
I fully expect the Steelers to have a long-term deal with Le'Veon Bell, maybe this weekend, like as soon as this weekend, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be my thought. I think that would be their main priority to get. I mean, they already got Brown now, all tied up to his. I think it was 5 years, $72 million deal, something close to that.
Yeah, it's a 5 years, $72 million deal, but it's 4 years of new money. So pretty much they just tore his contract up, and then they created his exact same final year of his contract and added on to it.
And it's $40 million guaranteed. Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay. Sometimes
it's around there.
Okay. Yeah, because I always remember unimportant stuff like NFL stuff, but then when it comes to memorizing stuff for a test, I never remember that. So.
Oh yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah. Le'Veon, I think, is an important piece for their offense, no matter if Ben retires next year or whenever he retires. Because whoever that new quarterback's going to be, whether it's Landry Jones, whether they draft somebody, whoever it is, they're going to need a wide receiver, and they're going to need a running back like Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, absolutely. Their next quarterback is not Landry Jones. I think this year's still a little too early to be looking for a successor. Although if they really wanted to, I really like Patrick Mahomes out of Texas Tech.
So I heard.
But like I said, yeah, that's a very, very much a luxury pick.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be looking for someone to go for like an immediate need, someone like a pass rusher.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely need pass rushing help. And Matthew actually talked about this on the Armchair Express podcast, which I always called the Armchair NFL podcast when you guys were on the last time. But now we know. Now I know the actual title. Armchair Express podcast, NFL podcast on Armchair. And they had our Mel Kiper, our version of Mel Kiper on the show as well. Better than Mel Kiper, better than Todd McShay, better than Mike Mayock. It was Grant Baker, the draft expert for ArmchairAllAmericans.com. We will definitely be having him on the show here relatively soon as well. I think the week of the 20th is when we will have him on to talk about the draft, as the draft will be fastly approaching at that point, and talk about some of his picks, maybe talk about what he likes for the Vikings and some of the other teams, top 10 picks and that kind of thing. But yeah, Grant Baker, I just listened to that podcast last week. Please check it out because Grant is so knowledgeable. I was just like blown away with the knowledge that he has in his mind.
Yeah, Grant's one of the smartest people I know in terms of the draft, and I could listen to that guy talk all day, and it was really fun just like talking to him and listening to him. And since I was hosting that week, it was nice to be able to kind of direct him towards topics that were most interesting to me. Yeah. Personally, because we were talking about a mock draft that he did by himself. Right. And so that was just fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun to listen to, and hopefully you can get Grant on more episodes too as the draft goes. But yeah, we'll definitely try to get him here on the You Don't Know Jack show so you can hear how knowledgeable he really is, not just take our word for it. He is he knows his stuff. That is to say the least. But moving on now. As we said, Le'Veon Bell was one of the big moves. I don't even have my little type-up I had for you, but Matthew, but I will do my best. We're going to go to the Brown extension right now, and obviously that was a big part. I don't know if you think it was the biggest part of the offseason, but what are your thoughts on the 5-year deal for Antonio Brown?
Well, it was definitely probably the most important thing to happen this offseason. Antonio Brown has been incredibly loyal to the Steelers because he was drafted in 2010. And what a lot of people don't know is that do you remember Mike Wallace? Yep. They had Mike Wallace, who was primed to be the number one receiver. Mm-hmm. And they went to extend Mike Wallace, and they wanted to give him a 5-year deal. And Mike Wallace thought he deserved more. And so the Steelers said, fine. They gave the 5-year deal to Antonio Brown. Mm-hmm. Mike Wallace left in free agency, and Antonio Brown's been playing on that contract. He's been one of the best receivers in the league, playing on a very very small deal, to be honest. Yeah. And so he's just been so loyal. And last year, what the Steelers have been doing is they've been for the past 2 years they've been converting money from his. They've pretty much been taking money from the next year and converting it into like a signing bonus and fronting it to him. And they've done that for the past 2 years. And last year, I think he got a verbal commitment from Art Rooney, the owner and the president of the Steelers, saying, we're going to get a deal for you done next year. And they got it done.
Yeah, and I mean, the Steelers, as we know, they need help on defense. But, yeah, I agree with you. Antonio Brown, one of the most integral parts of that offense. When Heath Miller retired, you didn't have much at tight end. Martavis Bryant, with his suspension, you don't know what he's going to do now. You needed to get Antonio Brown locked down.
Yeah, absolutely. And where was I going with this? A lot of people have been, the last time I was on the show, we talked about Antonio Brown and the Facebook Live video in the locker room. And yep. A lot of people have been pointing to, off-field issues. He's been fined for celebrations and stuff. And he could have made so much more, a way bigger deal about this, okay, because he's been underpaid for the past 3 years. Mm-hmm. But the thing with the Steelers is it's the only exception is for quarterbacks. Is the only time they rework contracts is a year before it expires. And they held true to that. Antonio Brown understood that. He wanted to stay in Pittsburgh, and so he didn't make any noise about his contract at all. I mean, people were talking about him holding out for the past 2 years. It never happened.
Yeah, he's been extremely loyal to the Steelers, as you said. He hasn't said much. I mean, maybe here or there he alluded to he wanted to get a bigger deal done, but it's not anything like some players have said, or they've held out like an Earl, or not an Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor for the Seahawks, and other notable players that have held out. They don't complain about it. They know what their contract is, and they do it. That's how it should be done. Maybe the franchise tag is a little cruel for players that they can't go out and make their own decisions, but at the same time, you should be able to play out your contract in the NFL. I mean, you sign the contract, you're playing with the team, you should do it.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I don't necessarily have the strictest. I don't agree with you in the strictest sense, since a lot of times organizations can take advantage of players through like contracts. But it's just always nice to see that both parties are able to work it out. You know, the Steelers were amenable to Antonio Brown. Like I said, they were front loading a lot of his money to appease him on a year by year basis. But it's just nice to see both parties come together and work something out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, we're going to take a break here quickly, but when we come back, Matthew's going to tell us where he thinks actually Antonio Brown should be ranked in the top receivers, and I'll talk about that too. Even though I didn't tell you about it, we can talk about it a little bit. We'll talk about that, and we'll talk also about James Harrison coming back. Yes, he's 38 years old, but he's coming back. We'll talk all about that coming up next. We'll be right back on the You Don't Know Jack Show. Do you like shopping on Amazon? Well, now you can do it by helping the show at the same time. Go to the website youdon'tknowjackshow.com and click on any of the Amazon links, and then you can bookmark it. And every time you shop on Amazon, click the bookmark. It's the easiest way to support us without any extra cost to you. Now back to the show. And welcome back to the You Don't Know Jack Show with today Mathew Martinez and Carson, the host of the You Don't Know Jack Show. The boys will be back on with me next week. And now we move on to Antonio Brown. How good is he? Really, how good is Antonio Brown? Matthew, obviously, definitely a top 5 at the worst receiver in the league, and I think for sure top 3, in my opinion. And, of course, it all depends on who you ask. But do you think that he is worthy of the number 1 spot, or do you think Julio's got that locked up?
That's tough because Julio Jones is something else, man.
He is.
I think I might give Julio the edge, but just barely. Antonio Brown is just fantastic as a route runner, and like that's what makes him special because he's 5'10", 5'11", like 185 pounds or something.
Yeah.
He's a small dude, but the dude works harder than anyone else on the team. I follow him on Snapchat. He's always uploading or posting he's the second hardest worker on the team. Second to James Harrison.
Oh yes.
But I'll get to that later. I follow Antonio Brown on Snapchat. The dude's always at the gym. There's always reports of training camp. I know last season at training camp there was a report of the DeMarcus Ayers. I think it was DeMarcus Ayers, who was a rookie last season, and he was walking off the field after practice, and Mike Tomlin came up to him and he said, he just pointed to Antonio Brown at the jugs machine catching balls, and DeMarcus Ayers turned around, walked over, and started doing the jugs machine.
Wow.
So it's impressive. He's an incredibly hard worker. But I think I do have to give it to Julio Jones.
Just because of his height and just the way he just goes up and gets the ball.
He just has everything, man. I think Antonio Brown might be a little bit better of a route runner. In fact, he definitely is, I think. But Julio Jones is a good route runner, and then he just has the intangibles of being 6'3" and having the ability to go up and make those amazing catches.
Yeah. Stupidest trade the Browns ever made. Well, probably not, but still. That was not a good one. They really missed out. Of course, he probably wouldn't have done anything in Cleveland anyway.
Yeah, I remember watching that trade. It was one of the first drafts I ever watched, and I was excited.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I got into liking the draft so much.
Yeah, it is interesting, some of those trades that go on during the draft, and we'll see how many big trades happen this year. That'll be interesting to cover too, and I'm sure Grant will talk about trades he thinks could happen when he comes on the show as well. Moving on to Mr. Harrison, one of your favorite players, Matthew.
That's the only Steelers jersey I own.
All right. He obviously has been in the league a long time. He obviously still can play if he's in the league at 38. 2-year extension, $3.5 million. Was it total or per year?
3.5 per year.
Okay.
Wait, I think I'm not sure actually. Let me look it up real quick.
Okay, because I read your article on it and I can't remember what it was.
Oh no, that's 3.5 total.
3.5 total. So
which
about
is
1.8. No, it's like I don't know what it is. I can't do math.
1.75.
Yeah, there we go. That is the number I was looking for. Okay. So, obviously one of your favorite players. Do you think he was paid adequately, and do you think he's got 2 years left?
I think he does have 2 years left. Was he paid adequately? He could get a lot more money somewhere else. I'm not talking about a massive deal, but this is a very cheap contract, and it's absolutely an example of a hometown discount. I know a lot of people talk about, maybe he'll just give us a hometown discount. This is what a hometown discount is. James Harrison, he's been with Pittsburgh for almost his entire career. We'll just forget about his time in Cincinnati. His kids are here. His family loves it here, and he just doesn't want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you think about his play this year? Did you think he would maybe retire after this year, or were you pretty sure he would come back?
Well, that was the big question. No one really knew because he's already quote unquote retired.
Yeah. Right.
But then he just came back immediately when the Steelers asked him to.
Yeah.
And he was the best pass rusher on this team this season. When Bud Dupree came back, he certainly had an impact. But technique-wise and just overall as a pass rusher, James Harrison was the best pass rusher on the team.
Not even Stephon Tuitt, none of those guys were even better than him this year, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they play different positions, but right. James Harrison definitely was a better in terms of pass rushing. He was absolutely on a. Okay, well, James Harrison actually dropped back a lot into coverage, which a lot of people don't think. But like on a pressure per rush basis, James Harrison was absolutely the best. Yeah.
Do you think that do you think he's lost some of his speed, or do you think quite a bit of his speed has kind of remained?
Well, James Harrison isn't a speed guy; he's a strength guy.
Right.
And I was talking about how Antonio Brown might be the second hardest worker on the team. James Harrison is the hardest working person on the team. When he signed his contract, he was in the gym working out like 20 minutes later. And the dude's 38. Check out his Instagram. It's freaking crazy. It's insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it is just power. And what he does is he's pretty short for an outside linebacker. He's only 6 feet tall, but he uses that to his advantage. And he has incredibly powerful legs, and he has an incredible bull rush. If you want to look at it, go ahead and look at him against Eric Flowers when they played the Giants this season. Eric Flowers is not a good NFL lineman, but James Harrison took him to the shed that game. It was awesome.
Yeah, well, I think quite a few people have taken Eric Flowers to the shed, to be fair. I mean, not to take anything away from James Harrison, obviously. He's been a very good player in this league for a long time, but holy smokes, Eric Flowers. Ooh, man.
Yeah.
Everson Griffin, he had a heyday against him when they came to Minnesota earlier in the year when the Vikings were actually good.
Yeah, that might not be the best example, but,
But, yeah, he's awful. And when you guys were talking about Eric Flowers and drafting a replacement for the Giants for him, I was like, and Grant was saying, well, he's probably the worst tackle in the league. And I was like, have you met TJ Clemmings? But yeah, him and I will have to talk about that when he comes on the show. But TJ Clemmings was right up there with being one of the worst. And it's not really fair to be so down on Clemmings. I mean, he was supposed to be the right tackle, and he was also supposed to be the backup also. He wasn't supposed to start, but kind of got forced into that. And then when the Vikings had Matt Khalil go down and Jake Long go down, they had to put him in there. And that was really the only option. So that was kind of where he was forced into it. But
well, he was also a fourth-round pick.
Right.
Whereas Eric Flowers was taken 12th overall, I think.
Yes. Right. Yeah, so... Yeah, definitely has not performed as well as he should be, considering where he was taken. I totally agree with you on that. So James Harrison resigns. Do you think how many more pass rushers do you think the Steelers need this season to kind of be set in the offseason, getting some guys?
I think they bring in 2. I think they draft one in the first 2 rounds, and then either bring in a late round guy or get one of those kind of priority undrafted free agents.
Okay.
But I think, like I said the last time I was on the show, I think they'll draft 2.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to do that. I mean, they're one of the teams, it seems like, from what I've heard and from other people say, you can never have too many pass rushers because you always got to have extra. The Vikings, they've got a really good defensive line, and they've got a lot of good pass rushers on that defensive line, but they've got guys that are getting older, so it might be a possibility they take a guy like a Darius English maybe later in the game, or later in the rounds, kind of a developmental guy. Doesn't have a lot of weight on him, but he's got the skills. He's 6'6", and he had a lot of sacks in his days at South Carolina. But the only thing was he was undersized weight-wise, and that's really what has drawn people back. But honestly, if I'm the Vikings and I don't need a guy to come in right away, maybe have him develop, I'd be interested in him. And the Steelers probably want somebody more like a Takaris McKinley, as I think you talked about on the Armchair Express podcast. And I really like him, too. I did a profile on him also when I did Vikings options on the defensive line. And I really thought he sounded like he was going to be good. And obviously I've got Myles Garrett. But what I thought was interesting is Grant thought that McKinley had better pass rushing ability than Myles Garrett?
I know Grant is. Me and Grant are both pretty high on McKinley, but I know a lot of people who aren't. But I think in terms of ceiling, I think Tack might have a higher ceiling than Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is absolutely the most polished pass rusher in the draft and like the best overall complete player. But I think if Tack McKinley can really tap into his potential, I think he could be better.
Wow.
And I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but
yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting, you know. I think with McKinley, some people think he could slip all the way to even the end of the first round, which would be ludicrous, I think, because if you're talking about that much potential there and his ability that he did show in college, how do you not take this kid at least in the top 15?
Well, like I said, I'm a lot higher on Tack McKinley than a lot of people. He's very raw,
Right.
but his athleticism is what's really attractive to me. I think it'll be similar to Bud Dupree. And the athleticism is something that the Steelers have been valuing for the past few years. But the thing with Tack McKinley that might drop him down is he's going to need labrum surgery. And he's waiting. He's going to go through all the combine drills and stuff like that. But he is going to require he does have a shoulder injury that's going to require surgery. And it's the same injury that Carl Lawson needed with the Bills. Okay. And Carl Lawson was out. I think he was on the PUP list until like week 6 or something. But the difference between Tack McKinley and Carl Lawson is that Tack is getting the surgery a lot sooner than Carl Lawson. I think he's getting it like 2 or 3 months prior to the time when Carl Lawson got his surgery done.
Okay, well that's good. That shouldn't hold him back too much. But yeah, I mean, if I'm the Steelers, why not go for this guy? I mean, there's some other guys later in the draft maybe that are interesting, and I know they need probably still some secondary help. I think you would probably agree with me on that. And,
yeah, they could use a nickel corner.
And but there's so many guys for corners in the draft too. Between corners, running backs, and there was another class. Oh, tight ends. Those are about the 3 biggest classes, or best classes depth-wise in the draft. So, I mean, if you need positions from there, you don't have to go in the top 2-3 rounds to get guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, and did you say edge? Because edge is also super deep.
Yeah. I mean, with the rushers, like you got a guy like Tano Passano, and you've got guys like
Joe Mathis out of Washington.
Yeah, and you got the guy from Clemson, pass rusher, defensive end. I can't remember his name. But yeah, and even defensive tackles. There's quite a few guys there too. I mean, it's not probably as deep as defensive ends, but the defensive line class is pretty good again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Steelers decide to do. Vikings obviously don't want to probably draft a defensive end or defensive lineman probably in the first couple of rounds, but they probably need to get another defensive tackle somewhere in the draft because with Sharif Floyd's question marks, he was out for most of the year, and Tom Johnson had his Achilles injury that took him out for the last few games. You're kind of running thin on the defensive tackle list, so the Vikings maybe will have to take that into account here in the offseason.
Yeah, that lack of a first-round pick is really going to hurt the Vikings, I think.
Yeah, they do have though 5 picks in the first 5 rounds, I think it is though, or first 4 rounds though. So they have 2 in the 3rd and 2 in the 4th. So they do have some depth in there, and so
that's good.
So that is good, yeah. And the Vikings have done a lot of good with some players in those areas, so we'll see if they can get some good players in there again. Spielman's been pretty good at getting players like let's see, Eric Kendricks in the second round. A lot of people were thinking that he wouldn't, I don't know if he would be, he wasn't a first round, of course, middle linebacker, maybe not a first round guy, but they got him. He led the nation in tackles at middle linebacker in UCLA. They got him in the draft. He's been pretty darn good considering where they got him and considering how young he is yet. And then you got other guys that he got too, like Daniil Hunter. He got him in the third round. Developmental guy who was an athletic freak at LSU, but he didn't really have the numbers, but he has proven to be phenomenal. He was third in the league in sacks. So, I mean, the Vikings have succeeded with a lot of those picks there, so it'll be interesting to see what they do there.
And the Vikings didn't get any compensatory selections, did they?
No, they did not.
See, that's what I was really excited about because the Steelers got a third, and I have no idea how they got that.
Yeah, that is kind of odd. Did they?
Yeah, that's one of those things where everyone's pretty sure someone made a mistake, but no one's going to point it out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll take the pick. No problem. We're not going to point it out to you. But yeah, that'll be interesting. We're going to take another break here, and then when we come back, we will talk. We're going to come back with a game that we've had on the show in the past. It's been gone for a while, but we're going to play Ludicrous or Legit. And it's only one question. Maybe we'll have some more. And then we'll also have some more NFL news and notes to close out the show. So we'll do that after we take another time out. You are listening to the You Don't Know Jack Show. Back after this.
Heading to Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Baltimore, New York, London, or anywhere in the world and need a rent-a-car? Well, check out CarRental8.com, where you'll find the same car for less money. CarRental8.com sells all the brands like Dollar, 50, Budget, Avis, Hertz, Alamo, Europcar, and so much more at affordable rates. We'll beat any price by a minimum of 30%. So check us out online at CarRental8.com or call us at 1-813-343-8138. That's 1-813-343-8138.
Use the promo JACKSHOW5, that's JACSHOW5, to get 5% off your next car rental. Use all capital letters when you type in the promo code. Now back to the show. Welcome back to the You Don't Know Jack Show. Again, joined by Mathew Martinez. He knows his Steelers. He knows his NFL. He is pretty smart when it comes to football. Matthew, you have been a Steelers fan for pretty much your whole life, haven't you?
Yeah, as long as I've been in football.
And have you kind of been a football fan your whole life, or you just kind of is there a certain age when you really got into it?
Middle school when I started playing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, for me, as I put in my biography or whatever on Armchair All-Americans, I said that I have a picture of me watching a Vikings game when I was a baby. I was in a Vikings onesie, and I was sitting in front of the TV, laying on my back, and my head was turned to the TV. So then I knew for sure I was a Vikings fan at that time, apparently.
That's adorable.
I know. I'm sure my dad was so proud seeing me in that, and then the Vikings. And I would really like to see where I was when the Vikings lost the '98 championship game, because I was only 2 years old. Actually, like a year and a half at that time in '98.
Well, you were probably crying just like everyone else.
I was crying, but I didn't really know what was going on. My dad was probably crying, and then I was like, okay, I'll just cry too. So, yeah, I don't remember that one very much, but I do remember 2009. That was the worst. I'll even take that over Blair Walsh because, I mean, Vikings weren't necessarily expected to win against Seattle last year, and they almost did, and who knows how far they would have gone after that, you know, I mean, but this was one game away from the Super Bowl, and honestly, I think the Vikings could have beaten Peyton Manning that year. I mean, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
I think the Saints obviously did, and I think the Vikings offense could have easily challenged Peyton Manning, but obviously not yet, not to be, as I do not know the feeling of having Super Bowls like Steelers fans or Patriots fans, as we have found out on the last time you guys were on the show, you and Daniel. So, without any more pain and agony for me, it seems like it never ends as a sports fan. Play ludicrous or legit here with you, Matthew. What we do is we say a sentence or a statement, make a statement, and then you tell me if it's ludicrous or legit. So here's my statement. If Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown left, or Bell left, they didn't sign him on the didn't tag him, and they couldn't re-sign Brown. He was going to probably be a free agent after this year. Just for the heck of it. Big Ben retires. Ludicrous or legit?
Ludicrous.
And why?
I think Ben's got 2 more years. At the very least, 2 or 3 more years. And, you know, it's hard to walk away from football like that, especially when, like, if your team's biggest stars left. I don't think he'd want to leave the Steelers in that kind of a situation.
Right. So let's say Antonio Brown just played out the final year of his contract, which is this year, right? His original contract.
Yes.
Or his last one. So let's say he played out that, and then moved on. Steelers didn't tag him. Le'Veon Bell was gone the previous year. They didn't tag him then. Let's just say that happens. No world would that ever happen, but let's play our fantasy game here. Does Big Ben come back if they don't re-sign Antonio and Le'Veon Bell's gone?
That is different, I think. Because I do think next year, if Ben hints at retirement, I'll take it a little bit more seriously.
Right.
At the very least, you're looking for... I think next year they start looking for his replacement.
Yeah.
Although even then, I think I would still bet my money on him returning. But I think that would be maybe his last season.
Do you think if the Steelers won another Super Bowl, do you think the silver lining is, or the story's written on the wall that he's done, the writing's on the wall, he retires?
Maybe. I think if the Steelers were to win a Super Bowl this year, James Harrison would retire.
Right.
But I'm not entirely sure about Ben. And what's concerning is, to me, and a lot of people don't really remember or just haven't heard about it, is Maurkice Pouncey, the Steelers center, has said he never wants to take another snap from another quarterback. And so he's hinted that when Ben walks away, he's going to walk away, which I don't know how much stock to put into that, but that is kind of concerning when you're just so close to Ben being done.
Right. Well, yeah, and I mean, Pouncey, is Maurkice or Mike that's the older one? I think it's Maurkice, right?
Maurkice.
And he's like, what, 29 right now?
Let me check real quick.
28, 29, maybe 30.
I don't know if he's older than Mike, but he's the one who came out first in the NFL because Maurkice Pouncey came out in 2000. I think he was drafted in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, he was drafted in the first round in 2010, and his brother came out the next year.
Okay.
He's 27.
27. Oh, okay. So Mike is maybe Mike is old. I don't know. But anyways, he's not really very old. I mean, especially for a center. Centers seem like they can play a long time.
Yeah.
So that would be very weird to see him retire. I mean, if they
that would all be personal preference.
Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting. Steelers would have a lot of rebuilding to do then. New center, new quarterback.
Yeah, once Ben retires, I don't think unless they can get I don't know what the quarterback class would be like when Ben retires, but
yeah,
I can see the Steelers not making the playoffs for the immediate years, maybe 3 or 4 years after Ben retires.
Yeah. So that's ludicrous or legit, unless you have a statement for me that you want me to say ludicrous or legit to or something.
Shoot. I wasn't prepared to ask that.
No, I know.
I just
figured I'd ask you in case you had something, but that's fine. I really didn't have much either planned on that. One more ludicrous or legit for you. I got. The Steelers will win another Super Bowl before Big Ben retires. Ludicrous or legit?
Legit. They were super close to winning. Well, they were super close to getting there this year, and I don't see. I think another year of good, solid drafting, especially if they got one similar to this past year's draft. I think that puts them over the top.
Yeah, they're good. Do you think there's any other than the Patriots? Do you think there's any really other competition in the AFC?
In the AFC?
Yeah.
Shoot. Let me look at a list of all the teams.
Well, the Jets are probably not going to be good for a while.
No, not the Jets, not the Bills, not the Dolphins, not the Browns.
The
not
Dolphins
the Bengals.
actually are kind of interesting. I mean, Tannehill is maybe holding them back, but they've improved.
They've definitely improved, especially down the stretch last season. But
yeah, they're not.
I don't see the
Super Bowl.
Dolphins as a major threat.
Right.
The
Colts,
Raiders, the Chiefs,
Raiders, yeah,
the Texans,
Chiefs.
if they can get a good quarterback.
Yeah. But I mean, for the Raiders, they haven't had much playoff experience, and Carr still hasn't had any experience because of his injury. Alex Smith is never going to win a Super Bowl, and the Colts always seem to have problems with defense. Otherwise, I would say if they get a good defense, I'd be concerned with them because Andrew Luck is Andrew Luck. But I mean, some people think he's overrated, and you can make the case for that, but you can also make the case that they've been drafting terribly with him.
Yeah, they've drafted awfully.
Yes, and apparently I think Grigson is gone now, so they finally made the right move there, but who knows if that will make a difference with Pagano. Is Pagano a good coach or not? That kind of thing. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who's all competing in the AFC next year. And I think the NFC is going to be pretty similar, I would say.
I think that the NFC is a lot better of a conference than the AFC. It's just the Patriots have been the Patriots.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I think the Texans, if they can, I know, Grant, if you're listening, I'm sorry, but I have to. I think if the Texans get Patrick Mahomes, Bill O'Brien's a really good quarterbacks coach. Mm-hmm. So if any team is going to maximize their potential, the potential of Patrick Mahomes, I think it's going to be the Texans. And I think he could do really well for them.
Yep.
Especially with that defense.
Yeah, that defense is good. One area, though, I think that defense does struggle is in the secondary. Their secondary is not that great. People mistake that because of their pass rush, which does help their secondary. But, I mean, they don't have much in the back end. Jonathan Joseph probably is their best corner, and he's getting old. And their second best corner, A.J. Bowie, or however you pronounce his name,
Bouye.
he's going to go to Bouye. He's going to free agency, so he might not return. So quickly, all of a sudden, you got that defense kind of falling apart.
JJ's doing well.
Well, they have Kevin Johnson, who was their first rounder. He was
Right.
hurt last year. So I think he comes in and replaces Jonathan Joseph, and if they can sign A.J. Bouye to a contract, then I think they'll be set, at least at corner. I don't know how their situation is at safety.
Yeah, their safeties are not the greatest from what I've seen. That's always been so. If you have a good offensive line, if Houston and Dallas per se were in the same conference, and they were in a playoff game, I would definitely lean towards Dallas because Dallas's offensive line slows down that pass rush, and that gives the quarterback time to look through that secondary, and I think that secondary is pretty overrated if people think it's good, because I don't think it's that good, honestly, but that's just me.
Yeah, I think it's a little better than what you're making it out to be, but I think their safeties could definitely use an upgrade.
See, to me, it's kind of like how the Cowboys had it this year, where their defense played well, not because their defense was good, I don't believe. It was because the Cowboys' offense was so good that the defense fed off of that energy, fed off of all that scoring and all that stuff, and that's how they kind of made themselves better than what they actually were. They played better than their potential, you know. That's kind of where it's like where the Texans' secondary plays better because the pass rush gets there and they don't have to do as much because the quarterback's hurrying to throw the ball or he's getting sacked. So I think if you take away a less potent offense for Dallas, their defense wouldn't be as good. And the same way for Houston. You take away their pass rush, their secondary is not going to be good. And that, of course, goes for any secondary, but especially for Houston, I think. But, yeah, that's just my hearsay, whatever. So, quickly moving on, Matthew, what do you think some interesting transactions? Obviously, there's a lot of big transactions that went down. Jamal Charles gets cut. Obviously, AP option not picked up. You had Kirk Cousins. He was tagged. You had some other tags going on. What other than Steelers news was kind of eyebrow raising, if you will, in your opinion?
Well, looking into the free agency class for offensive linemen, everyone's always talking about how awful this offensive line class is to the draft, and rightfully so. It's pretty bad, especially after the first round. But the free agency class hasn't looked that great either. But the Jaguars didn't pick up the contract or the option for Kelvin Beachum. He had a deal where it was a 1 year. It was a 1 year deal with an option for 4 more, and the Jaguars didn't pick that up. So now he's a free agent. And if anything, he's a serviceable tackle. When he was with the Steelers, he was a pretty good tackle. He's been hurt off and on last year, and he had an ACL the year before. That's why he left. Yeah. But he's now on the market, as well as Russell Okung, because the Broncos didn't pick up his option. So I think this free agency class got a little bit better after that. Yeah.
Yeah. And, of course, you got Andrew Whitworth.
That's your guy.
That's my guy. Yep. And thank goodness the Bengals did not pick up his option, or not his option, but didn't tag him. The tagging deadline is up, so they didn't tag him, so he's going to be a free agent. Vikings, make their push. Please do it. Give him the money. Give him the money, please.
If they sign him, I want you to throw a fiesta.
I will throw a huge party.
Just margaritas for everyone.
Margaritas for everyone. Okay. All right. We don't promote drinking on this podcast. Anyways. But yeah, no, I would definitely throw a party for Andrew Whitworth. We will We will gladly take him with open arms, and when he comes, signs the deal, that will be one huge signing. And then the really interesting part for me, Matthew, is the guards in this free agency class, which I think they are just filled with good guards. I mean, from Kevin Zeitler to Chance Warmack to Luke Jokel, I think, is another one. And there's just some other really good names as well. Larry Warford and Larry, there's another Larry, I think, Ron Leary from Dallas. Just some good names out there on the market for the guards position for sure.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the guards. I just know the tackle class was pretty bad. And I haven't really had a need to look at any of that in terms of free agency, just because the Steelers had a pretty good line themselves.
Yes, I'd say definitely top three line between
Where
them.
do you think Adrian Peterson's going to wind up?
You know, I was debating on what I'm going to write tonight because I've got an article due tonight, and I'm lazing around waiting to come up with something. I was planning on doing an evaluation of the cornerbacks, but I might hold off on that till next week or something. And what I'm thinking of doing is a short-term article on trade options or maybe Peterson, where he could end up. But I feel like everybody's done an article on where Peterson should end up or top teams or whatever. I mean, I think it'd draw a lot of attention, but kind of want to be original a little bit, I mean, kind of gets old seeing the same thing again, unless you have like new teams or whatever, which I could come up with new teams. But I thought it was interesting how somebody said the Raiders would be an interesting spot, which I think that would be an interesting spot. I just don't know if I see it happening. I think the Raiders might do it though, because a lot of the other running backs they have, like Jalen Richard and whoever else they have, they're kind of
DeAndre Washington,
Texas
Tech, Wreckham.
Right. They have those guys, and those guys are more of the finesse type running backs and more of the catch the ball out of the backfield, third down type running backs. And Peterson is not.
They have Latavius Murray, who's
actually a free agent too.
Is he? I don't know if they're going to bring him back or not.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think they are. I honestly don't. I think Murray could get more than Peterson, just because of Murray has had better years the last year for sure, and then I don't know about the year before. Peterson did lead the league in rushing, which isn't saying much for only 1485, and you had a lot of injuries last year, but Peterson, I just don't know. I've thought about the possibility of him going to Green Bay and then Eddie Lacy coming to the Vikings. I was thinking maybe I could write an article on that, how different that would be. But I don't know. I think the Giants is a stretch because of all the cap that they have, all with Eli Manning and their defensive line and their defense as a whole. They've got so many pieces of really high amounts of money, and now they tagged JPP also, and I'm sure that wasn't a cheap deal. So they've got a lot of money tied up everywhere else. I don't think Peterson's going to go there. Tampa Bay is a possibility. I think Tampa Bay could be a possibility there with Sims kind of being that third down back. And Doug Martin basically is done in Tampa, I think, after being taken to that treatment facility or whatever. I think Green Bay could be a good spot for him, honestly. As much as I hate to say it, I really hope he doesn't go. As I said in my Peterson article at the end, please don't go to Green Bay. Because that would just leave room for him to go tear up the Vikings, and I'm sure he'd, the most funny thing would be is if he had a big fumble against the Vikings, and that would be the difference in the game. But that probably wouldn't happen. At least I wouldn't think it would. But, there's a lot of different places he could go. I don't think Dallas is going to even though people say Dallas is still interested, I don't know why you would want him. I mean, he's not gonna start behind in front of Zeke after what Zeke just did, and they've got other running backs on the roster too, Darren McFadden, and they've got Lance Dunbar. And I don't think any of those guys make more money than Adrian Peterson will want to make. So I think Dallas is off the table. Houston's got Lamar Miller. I think they're off the table. And he had a pretty good year, and he just signed last offseason. So I think Peterson's going to not be able to go to Texas anyway for a signing. I don't know what do you think?
I don't know where I think he'll wind up. I know a lot of teams don't like investing, rightly so. They don't like investing a ton of money into running backs,
right?
Money or resources. I think in terms of where he would fit in, that really is hard because I don't really see any teams outside of maybe Seattle. Would he fit in at Seattle? They have Thomas Rawls, though, and CJ Procise.
Yeah, I don't know if he'd fit well there. I mean, you've got guys like out of the backfield like CJ Procise, or Procise, however you want to say his name, and then you've got Alex Collins, who they just drafted. So if you keep those two guys for pass-catching situations and run Peterson first and second down, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, Peterson's going to be making – I know you don't think he's – I don't know what Peterson's value is, and I don't think a lot of people know what his value is. I think just some team is going to have to look at his value and see, can we fit him into our offense?
Right. And that was the problem with the Vikings. They tailored everything to Adrian Peterson. Like, it was the Adrian Peterson offense, which is dangerous to do because – unless you're going to have 2,000 yards rushing like Adrian Peterson did his MVP season, you're not going to win many playoff games, let alone maybe not even get to the playoffs, if you're going to base your offense just on the running back and feed him 25 carries a game. Unless you're up by 30 points by that time and you run him like 15 times in the fourth quarter, that is way too much for a regular basis. You've got to be able to throw the football, and you got to be able to take chances down the field. And the Vikings offense actually was not doing that well with play action when Peterson was on the field, because I think a lot of people were predicting play action at times. I think it was either, all right, Peterson's getting the ball, or they're doing play action when Peterson was in the backfield. I think that was basically the two options.
What about Jacksonville?
Yeah, Jacksonville seems like they're always
they don't have a running back of Adrian Peterson's quality, and I think if they can establish a run game and at least fix up a little bit of Blake Bortles' mechanics, I think they could turn that into something.
Yeah, I mean, if they got to go to if he like didn't get anywhere else to go to, like a more of a contender, he wants to go to a contender. But if he doesn't get that opportunity and he gets a lot of money from Jacksonville, he might go there. T.J. Yeldon was garbage last year. Their other running back, who I don't even know the name of, he wasn't that great. Oh, it was what's his name?
Wasn't he the guy from Michigan?
Chris Ivory, actually, from the
was
Jets.
He with the Jets?
Yeah, he was with the Jets, and then he went to the Jaguars last offseason. He was not that great in his first year in Jacksonville. So, yeah, they could use a running back, just depending on what Doug Marrone and their new regime wants to do. But we'll see if Jacksonville keeps going to that same old MO. That'll be interesting if they keep on going back to spend or not. Because that seems like what they always try to do in free agency, and then they haven't done anything with it. Maybe they'll actually try and draft better this time instead of go free agency. Right.
Yeah, I think free agency is something that you fill holes with, and then you build your foundation through the draft.
Right. See, I think the Vikings really could do well if they just address the offensive line in free agency. I think that's the best idea. And then for the rest of it, just go to the draft. I mean, get a linebacker in the draft. Get another safety in the draft. Safety is another big class I'm excited for. Budda Baker, I really like him. As Grant didn't really know much about him at first, but he kind of warmed up to him. And I am just very excited to see what the Vikings could come up with in this draft class. Just don't make it as bad as last year's. Last year's on a one-year review, the Vikings class last year was pretty bad. I mean, Mackenzie Alexander didn't see the field. Yes, there was a lot of good corners in front of him. Treadwell had one catch. Yes, there was receivers in front of him. Kentrell Brothers was probably the best player of the draft, and he was a special teams guy. So, and you didn't even have your fourth-round pick make the opening 53-man roster, which is pretty rare from people I've heard talk about that kind of thing. So,
yeah, but that's not unheard of. The Steelers drafted Dorian Grant a couple of years ago. He didn't make the roster.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not unheard of, but fourth-round picks usually should at least make the 53, or they should at least make – I don't even think he made final cuts. I'm not even 100% sure on that, but –
and they drafted Jaron Curse.
Yeah,
That's a mistake, I think.
Well, he was a seventh-round pick, so, I mean, it wasn't like they took a huge chance on him. But
he reminded me of Gerard Holloman, who, like a kind of a playmaker on the back end, but can't tackle to save his life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if the Vikings can develop him into anything. I think if Curse would actually develop into something, I mean, they still have Sendejo over there who will probably start the year unless the Vikings find somebody spectacular. But it'll be interesting because Sendejo starts there, but Curse, he's got the athletic ability and he's got the coverage ability, I think, playmaking ability to be on the back end while you put Harrison Smith in the box or let him roam wherever he wants to go. Because Harrison Smith, he can do everything. He can be up in the box or he can be back in coverage. I mean, he's not a great man-on-man coverage, but he's good, very good in zone coverage. So it'll be interesting to see if they can pair somebody perfectly with him. Vikings fans were thinking Eric Berry and Harrison Smith, that would be a dirty safety secondary right there, and that would have been fun to see, those two. But that was pretty much a pipe dream because Chiefs were going to be dumb if they let him go, and if he did go on the open market, he probably would have went somewhere else other than Minnesota. So, I guess that's really all I've got, Matthew, unless you've got anything else you'd like to add to the show today.
Not really. Who do you think the Vikings are going to – who do you want the Vikings to draft to replace Adrian Peterson?
I've talked about this a couple of different times in my articles. I didn't really talk about it in the Adrian Peterson article, but – because it was kind of just a short thing, but I really like to pair up with Jerick McKinnon, a guy like Samaje Perine from Oklahoma. Joe Mixon obviously has probably got the better, higher ceiling because of all of his other things he can do on the field other than run, but of course he's got that off the field issue that we won't talk about. But Perine is a great power runner. He's about 240 pounds almost, 6'1", kind of reminds you of a LeGarrette Blount type power running back. And LeGarrette Blount's a free agent too. That'd be an interesting pair up with McKinnon, like goal line situations. But Matt Asiata was awful in short yardage situations this past year. There's no other way to say it. If you think otherwise, you're wrong. It's just true. He was awful.
Yeah.
And I think Perine would be a good fit.
Yeah, I'm glad you said Perine because the reason why I asked was because I'm looking at combine numbers, and Samaje Perine put up 30 reps on the bench press.
Oh wow,
which is crazy.
Do you know what weight was that?
He weighed in at 233.
Okay. Do you know what weight he was bench pressing at?
Oh, that's they keep the bench press at 225.
225. Okay, so he
Yeah,
did.
it's the same for everyone.
Oh, okay.
And so P. Ryan put up 30. Donnell Pumphrey put up 5.
Is that another running back? I don't even know who that is, actually.
Yeah, Donnell Pumphrey out of – where's he out of? I'll look it up real quick.
Oh,
Donnell Pumphrey out of –
Is he that really fast guy?
San Diego State.
Is he that like 4'2" guy?
Yeah, he's like 5'9", 170 pounds or something. He's a small dude. Electric, but he's small.
He's like a DeAnthony Thomas kind of a guy?
Yeah, DeAnthony Thomas, Dree Archer.
Oh, yeah, Dree Archer. Yeah, I remember him, too.
Yeah, he was pretty bad.
Yeah, a lot of high expectations. Wasn't he with the Steelers?
He was.
Yeah,
he was
that's
pretty
right.
bad.
He was kind of they didn't draft him too high, did they?
3rd round.
Oh, never mind.
But
they did.
They took Martavis Bryant in the 4th, so I pretend that those are switched.
Hey, that's a good pick, even though he has not done much since that time. Quickly, or since his year because of the suspension or whatever. But quickly, thoughts on the receiving class for this draft? Who do you think's the best receiver? Grant has a different opinion than I do, but I think Mike Williams is the best receiver. I think he thought that he was the second best, but I still think Mike Williams is the best. What do you think?
I agree with Grant. I like Corey Davis.
Corey Davis.
Yeah, and the best way that I've seen it framed is Corey Davis will beat you on the ground. Mike Williams will beat you in the air. But the thing with Corey Davis is he's also 6'3", so he does have that jump ball capabilities, which is why I like him a little bit more.
Mike Williams, he's also 6'3", isn't he?
Mike Williams is 6'5", I believe.
Oh, 6'5".
He's up there.
Yeah. So he could be like a Mike Evans, or he could be a bust. I mean, there are, some people like to just automatically assume when a guy comes out that if he's 6'5", he's automatically going to be a good receiver. And that's not always the case. You've got guys like Dorial Green-Beckham, who has not done anything really in the NFL, and we had such high expectations for him. So, I mean, it doesn't always mean that you're going to be good just because you're tall. You got to be able to catch the ball and do stuff with it.
Absolutely.
So, all right, I guess that's really it. I mean, I guess for last thing on the running backs part, if the Vikings were really looking to draft a complete running back replacement and kind of put Jerick McKinnon solely on the second part of the depth chart, and they wanted a all-around do-it running back, trade up for Dalvin Cook, please. Because Dalvin Cook, I think, is the best running back in this class. I think Leonard Fournette is terribly overrated. He's just got one thing he does well, and that's run. It's like Adrian Peterson. Not saying Adrian Peterson's bad or that he was bad, had a bad career, but the way the offense is in the NFL now, you don't have many offenses that give your running back 25 to 30 carries a game, and that's kind of what Leonard Fournette is. Dalvin Cook can do it all. Christian McCaffrey, he can do it all. I like both of those guys in front of Fournette. But I don't know. I just think the Vikings can still pair up somebody with McKinnon, and it'd be a good 60-40, maybe 50-50 type of split between those two guys. Quickly, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't agree, but you're certainly entitled to those opinions.
You think Fournette's the best?
A guy like Alvin Kamara out of Tennessee, who a lot of people haven't been talking about.
Yep.
I think he might surprise people. He wasn't really used at Tennessee, but I think he's got the skill set to be a really good player.
Do you think he's got both catching and running?
He does. He did both at Tennessee.
All right. Yeah. Where do you have Leonard Fournette on your board? Or where do you think he is?
In terms of talent-wise, okay, Leonard Fournette's the best pure runner.
Yes, I agree with that.
Draft.
Right, I agree with that.
In terms of skills, I think Joe Mixon is the best running back in the class.
Okay.
Or at least tied with Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
So, I guess now that I think about it, yeah, Leonard Fournette might be number 3, but that's just because he's just a runner.
Right. And like I said, offenses are changing so much where they don't necessarily need that running back like an Adrian Peterson and that kind of thing. I mean, if we're back in the 1970s and 80s or whatever, yeah, that's what offenses were. And even then, in the 1980s, you started to see like Joe Montana and quarterbacks like that come out and change the offenses a little bit more. But yeah, I just don't think in today's NFL, a passing league where you're seeing defenses start to shift to have more nickel in their defense, 3 corners out every time, they don't run the ball, which maybe that'll change again. The NFL is always changing, evolving, whatever, but I just don't see much of a place in the league for Leonard Fournette. I think he might have a good career. I think he might be a great running back, key part running. But I just think he's going to be so limited because of his inability to catch, and I don't think his pass protecting was very good either at LSU.
Yeah, I said Joe Mixon, in skill-wise, is ahead of Leonard Fournette, in my opinion. But
Yep.
Joe Mixon's off my draft board. I wouldn't touch him.
Right, because of the issues that he had with, I think, assaulting his girlfriend or something?
He broke a girl's jaw. It wasn't his girlfriend or anything. He just punched this girl and broke her jaw.
Yeah. It seems like there's always a story like that.
Disturbing.
Seems like there's always a story like that in every draft, and it is very disturbing. Yes, I agree. So, well, I guess that's it for me. Any last remarks from you, Matthew?
Just follow Armchair All-Americans on Twitter at ACL-Americans, as well as Armchair NFL. And don't forget to check out our podcast, Armchair Express. We're on iTunes, so...
Yes, and we can also follow Matthew on Twitter at Matthew_Mart, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, but Matthew with 1 T.
Yes, with 1 T. I remember that now. So, Matthew, thank you for joining us. You can catch Matthew's work on ArmchairAllAmericans.com under the Steelers sections after you click on NFL teams, and we got all kinds of podcasts up there now. I tell you what, man, and we're getting all these kinds of inquiries about what our site is about, and we can't go into all those details, but Armchair is rolling along. It's exciting to see all the things that Armchair has in the future.
I love coming on the podcast.
Yes. Thank you, Matthew, and that is going to do it for the You Don't Know Jack show, and we will be back next week with Jonah and Aaron. I'm Carson saying so long. We will see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the You Don't Know Jack show with Jonah, Aaron, and Carson. If you want to read articles, get more information, or have questions about the show,